Welcome to Concept Being the podcast, where the intention is well, but let's be for real. Life gets a little chaotic, and so do we. And that's totally fine. It's fine. You're fine. I'm fine. We're literally fine. And we're all about finding the balance while staying honest with health, wellness, and all the juicy topics that matter. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Concept Being the podcast, where the intention is well. My name is Jade, and today's episode is going to be about the concept of being a digital nomad. And I'm joined with the incredible Courtney Sabo, a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree, founder, and award-winning designer. Currently a design partner at Pineworks. Her journey also includes the adventurous life of a digital nomad. Welcome, Courtney. So happy you're here.
Thank you for having me. Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. I'm so excited for our chat. I was telling Courtney before that I'm about to start my digital nomading journey. So this chat is right on time. I leave in February, so I'm taking notes on her entire life. This is going to be amazing. So to kick off the episode, shall we start with a moment?
Let's do it.
Okay. Do you want to go first or do you want me to go first?
You go first.
I'm going to start off with a wellness moment. So the last couple of days, I was really sick. I had like the flu and everything. I had the body shakes. It was really ugly. I'm not going to lie. I was walking around like all shaky and everything. And I still felt the need to be productive, which was very un-tourist-like of me. I was like, Jade, relax. Like this is just, you have nothing else to do. You don't have anyone to report to right now. Why are you feeling like you have to complete these projects with these deadlines that you created in your head? And I really had a mindset shift, and I was just like, you know what, Jade? Just relax, slow down. You are going to get these things done that you have on your goal list. Just slow down. It doesn't have to happen right now. So this morning I woke up and I knew we were recording this podcast, and I just thought to myself, and I said, I'm just going to have a slow morning and everything's going to go great. And everything is going to be right on time the way that it should be. So my wellness moment has been really slowing down and having a mindset shift. That is my moment. Courtney, I would love to hear yours.
Yes, I love that. I also feel the need to always be productive when sick. It's like such a big learning curve to get over that. But I'm going to go a little different. I'm going to say to keep up with daily walks. Maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I was chatting with my therapist, and I was saying just how I was having trouble creating a routine that actually felt good, like it was actually helping my well-being versus just like being productive. And she was like, well, let's walk through, what an ideal day might look like. I was like, okay, I'll get up and at like 8 o'clock or maybe before, depending on the sunrise, I'll go for a walk. And, I continued throughout the day and like listed all these other activities. And she was like, how does that feel to you? And I was like, honestly, like I'm never going to do the walk. Like it's just like I'm going to wake up and like I'm never going to want to do that. Slowly but surely over time, I feel like I've gotten a lot better at doing that daily walk. I think, I have a watch that tracks my steps, and getting 10,000 steps a day is low-key like pretty hard.
It's so hard.
Yeah, I mean, my husband also is great at going for walks, so he's usually encouraging me to like, hey, like, you haven't taken a walk today. But yeah, I went out this morning, took a 30, 45-minute walk around the neighborhood. It's very sunny here in Seattle today, and it was beautiful. So encourage you to get out and take a little walk.
I love that. I love that it's sunny in Seattle too. That feels amazing.
It is beautiful. It is very cold, as it is like the rest of the nation apparently, but it's very sunny, so it's a good day.
Well, thank you for sharing your moment with us. We love to hear it. I'm excited. Are we ready to chat about being a digital nomad?
Let's do it.
Okay, let's start off with, for the people that don't know what a digital nomad is, how would you describe what a digital nomad is?
Yeah, it's basically someone who works remotely, usually in some other part of the world or in the country, just away from their home base. So they are working while they're traveling. It's usually someone in tech because you're relying on Wi-Fi to do your job.
And you have been a digital nomad. Can you tell us your story? When did you start? Give us all the details. Like, don't feel like you just have to give us all. I want to know all the things. When did you start? Where did you go? The whole thing.
Yeah. So The story originates when my boyfriend at the time, now husband, and I were living in San Francisco. It was March 2020. So we were running a startup at the time together with one other person. We had a couple employees. It was a YC backed company. We had investment money. So it was, pretty serious. And it was just super stressful. And so then on top of that, COVID hit. The business was at the intersection of real estate and travel and hospitality. So naturally, the business got hit as well. And kind of throughout that whole COVID year, it didn't feel good, right? It didn't feel good for a lot of people all around the world. And we were very lucky to be living in California where we could go outside all of the time. But one of the difficult things for me was I was in California, but I'm from the East Coast originally. And so basically all of my family is still in the general kind of Pennsylvania tri-state area. And my sister had her second baby during that time. And everyone was just feeling pretty uncomfortable with me flying to see them during COVID, during all of that 2020. I ended up not going home kind of Christmas 2020 to see them, which was the first. I think that was the first Christmas that I ever missed with them. I was like, they're like, this kind of sucks. Like, we were kind of in San Francisco for most of it. We did a couple trips up and down the West Coast, but life just like wasn't really feeling good. The crime in our neighborhood picked up a lot in San Francisco, which I don't know, slowly but surely just didn't really feel like home anymore. And it felt like home and kind of this magical place for a long time, but it was losing that glimmer. And then we started to have friends leave, and just all of these things piled up over time. At one point, sometime after my parents, said, we don't feel great about you flying home for Christmas, I was like, well, like, what if we drove out there at some point? And so obviously that's a long trek from, San Francisco over to Pennsylvania. Um, but it slowly just kind of set in our minds, and we thought about it for probably 5 months or so before making a decision. But my husband then also started to get on board, and we were just kind of thinking, like, okay, this could be like a 3-month ordeal. At the time when this kind of idea came up, we both decided that we would be part-time founders, so we would get new full-time jobs that would ideally give us a little bit more financial stability. We were just renting at the time in San Francisco, so like we didn't have a mortgage to pay. We could just give up our apartment, put some stuff in storage. And finally one day we're just like, let's do it. Like, let's plan it. And so we planned on a 3-month road trip across the US and back through Canada, which is where my husband is from. Yeah, starting in kind of like February 2021, we started planning for our trip, which we ultimately left for on April 30th, 2021. So nearly 4 years ago now. Yeah, we just booked a bunch of Airbnbs. It's so funny that everybody asks us if we lived in a van. And I was like, oh no, like we were both like working from home. I mean, at the time, we both had so many meetings throughout the day. It's like, I think that there is some nice thought of traveling with your partner. I mean, he was not my husband at the time, he's just boyfriend, but obviously it worked out. We got married. But
Yes.
I feel like traveling with someone, whether it's your mom or your sister or your best friend or your romantic partner, it's just like you don't want to be around them 24/7, and a van just makes that so much harder.
Yeah, yeah. And van life was popping during that time too. I
Yeah.
remember it being like an entire thing. So I completely understand why everyone's like, were you doing van life during that time? But a van is close quarters. For sure it is that. So understandable.
Totally, yeah, yeah. We also were a little nervous about Wi-Fi. Obviously, it's like, we needed a
Yeah.
really good connection, and Airbnbs just felt a little bit more stable. But yeah, I mean, the beauty of getting rid of our apartment was that we had paid so much rent in San Francisco. I think our rent was like 3,600 for our teeny tiny apartment. And so without that, it's like we could spend money on Airbnbs all across the United States and still get great places. And so, yeah, we set off and kind of traveled through the South. And I'm like trying to remember because we actually ultimately did this trip kind of twice, but we went throughout the South. We're big hikers. So we tried to hit up a lot of national parks. So we went down to Utah to do Zion, which was epic because we ended up being able to hike Angel's Pass, which is the really popular and I guess kind of scary hike there before you needed a permit to do it. So it was like kind of before like all of these areas started to blow up. And that was kind of the great part about when we traveled. It was like still pretty heavy COVID time. So a lot of other people weren't traveling quite as much then. So it was, at least in the United States, a little bit easier to like book places, go sightseeing and not be swarmed by tourists. But yeah, we ultimately went to the East Coast to see my family, which was great. Got to see my new baby niece and yeah, made our way back through Canada. So that was my first ever cross country trip. And I think that was my husband Jack's third.
That's not what I thought you were going to say. I thought you were going to say third, and I was like, okay, sure, 13th. Well, at least he knew what he was doing. For sure, for sure. So, how long is it supposed to take to go cross country? Do you know?
Like hour wise.
Or like day wise? Like, is it supposed to, I assume it's a couple of,
I want to
I mean,
say
it's
if
a
you
big
just like,
country.
yeah, I want to say if you just drove straight, it's like 40 hours or something. But we
Okay.
made it take like a month and a half or so.
Okay. That's what I was like, how long was it supposed to take versus how long? So you guys did like a slower, just,
Yeah, yeah.
travel. How long were you guys staying in each Airbnb?
Yeah, we tried to do a week or two, and that pretty much stayed throughout the whole 3 years of us nomading. Some of them were a little bit shorter, like when we eventually went to Europe, we like hopped around a little bit more. But a week was kind of the minimum to one, feel like you got to know a place, but two, just to kind of feel comfortable too. It's like we tried to basically live our normal life still, and I think that was a challenge where you're in these brand new places that you've never been to and you totally have FOMO, right? It's like you see things on Google Maps, maybe like we did a little bit of research beforehand and we're like, oh my gosh, there's so many things to do, but also you just want to live a normal life and don't want to be too tired. It's like if you were just living at your house, like every day you wouldn't be doing something else. So it was a really good balance of trying to tone down the number of activities and not feel like you're exhausting yourself, but still living kind of your fullest life possible throughout all of that.
Okay, I love that. I'm a slow traveler, so I completely understand not trying to do too much. Like, I need a rest day and everything when I'm traveling every like third day. I get tired.
Totally.
So, totally understand y'all slowly traveling. So, that was your first roundabout. It sounds like you did like a circle. Like, you went to
Yeah,
the
yeah.
East Coast, went to Canada, and then came back.
Yeah, so we did a circle first. So we went through the US, over to the East Coast, back through Canada, which is crazy that there is one highway in Canada that comes back. It's like the Transcontinental Highway. And a big portion of it, it is just a two-lane road, like one lane going this way, another lane going that way, which just blew my mind. But anyway, once we came back from there, I think there are so many places that blend in my head because ultimately we lived in 18 different countries and, I can't even count the number of states, but we did a little bit of a stint in Hawaii for a bit, which was like very cool
That
to
sounds
live in.
nice.
I
Yeah.
think we were there for like 2 months or so in both Kauai and Maui, but we ended up going to Europe. And so we
Mhm.
kind of stayed as long as we possibly could there. So we started that time we went to Norway as a beginning, which I think was one of the places that probably impacted us the most and kind of felt the most, kind of like the most at home. And I think at home being just the general sense of being home. Obviously, like we didn't have a community of people there. We don't literally have like a house structure there, but it just felt like a really good place for us. And yeah, ultimately traveled like throughout Europe a little bit. We came back to the United States. We went down to South America because my husband at the time was working for a company who hired people in Uruguay. And so he was like, we could just like go visit them. Like we don't know anybody else down there. And so we saw them. We saw another friend who we had used to work with who was probably the digital nomad who inspired us to start nomading. He was a nomad for years and years before this was ever really like a thing or had a name coined to it. So we visited him in Brazil, which is where he kind of spent half the year at the time and then half the year back in the US. We came back to the United States. We did this trip again. across. And I think that time we maybe saw family again, but I think we went to a wedding in Maine and figured, why not drive? Yeah,
Why not? Why
yeah,
not?
yeah. And then ultimately ended up back in Europe. And then we ended our trip not this past fall, the fall before, when we went to Iceland for about a month and a half, and then ended fully in New Zealand for 2 or 3 months.
Nice. Okay. Questions. I have follow-up
Yes,
questions.
yes.
When you all were deciding where you're going to go, was it, I know people, places that I want to see there, vibes, or was it a combination of the two? You're like, let's just pop on over there. How did that go for you guys?
Yeah, we thought about biggest constraints first. One being that we both worked for American companies that expected us to work in some American time zone. And so that limited the general world area where in Europe we worked kind of, I think it was like 2 to 10 p.m. So that's kind of pushing it later in the day. And New Zealand was 5 a.m. through whatever 8 hours from that is. And so that was like kind of as far as we could go wide. Like working in Japan would have been kind of working in the middle of the night. And so once we had that, we thought about honestly like what are easier places to live. So like is English prevalent? My husband knows French, but besides that, we speak a little bit of other languages, but we didn't want to feel so much like foreigners in the area where it was just really hard to feel like we were truly living there. And then we just thought about our interests. It's like we both really like the outdoors, we like hiking, and then, yeah, just anything else that interests us. I always wanted to go to Italy. I love food in general. So obviously, it's like the foodie haven. And yeah, I mean, we had the benefit of ultimately after those 3 months we obviously decided to keep traveling, and because we didn't know how long, we kind of just like hit our bucket list places that we had wanted to go.
Makes sense. Okay. But y'all were working the entire time. So you had the different time zone situations to deal with. Along with that, was there any other like stressors that would pop up because you're working remotely that you noticed?
Not necessarily. I think Wi-Fi, because we were traveling every week or so and like didn't really know. I mean, we tried to do our research into Airbnb or wherever we were staying of like asking the host, what is your megabits per second? And obviously so many of them don't know. It's like such a tech
Right.
term. So there was always kind of a stress when we would walk into a place. It's like, let's pull up the like, site that we use and check the Wi-Fi speed to make sure calls will be okay. Because when we're working in kind of strange hours, like a coffee shop isn't going to be open at 10 o'clock at night, most likely to be our backup plan. So I would say that, and then a kind of outside of the work situation was just like having a community, right? So my husband and I just kind of had each other, which was great. But obviously, it's hard to rely on one person to meet a lot of your social needs. And so, like, we still try to like have calls with, friends from back home or wherever they lived and try to introduce, normal parts of our routine. Like, we're both very active. I do a lot of like HIIT workouts and strength workouts, so try to keep those up while we were traveling. In some parts it was pretty easy to just join a gym for a week or so, so we would do that, so it felt like home. And then, yeah, being a foodie, it's like I cook a lot, and so it was nice to have a mix of like trying new restaurants. And like in Italy, it's like we would eat out probably a lot more than we would anywhere else. So yeah, still being able to like cook similar foods that we would at home, I think gave us this grounding sense no matter where we were.
Thank you. Because that was my next question. I was like, how all of this entire episode is now geared towards me. I'm not going to lie to you.
Great.
Because I am a very much homebody. And so I wonder how people bring a sense of home when they're traveling. Usually for me, after like 2 weeks, I feel like I'm not on vacation and I can like be like, okay, Jade, you're actually in this spot, really solidify your routine and everything like that. So for you, you were still working out, you were still trying to do home cooked meals and everything like that. And that kind of gave you a sense of being home.
Totally, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think it's just kind of whatever brings meaning to you. or just kind of what are your normal rituals? I chatted with someone else who is now doing her digital nomad journey, and she is in the United States, which makes things a little bit easier because you can travel with more things in a car. But she brought her coffee maker, for example. It's like she knows that
Okay.
every morning she like wants her coffee a very specific way. She doesn't want to rely on having to, go out and buy coffee each day, or, depending on where you are, that might be hard. When we were traveling in the United States, because we had our car, I insisted to bring my Dutch oven because I joined the sourdough crew during COVID, and
Hey, I love that for you. Hey.
so I was like, well, like I like still want fresh bread, and in some parts there aren't great bakeries around, and so anyway, I feel like every time we got in the car to, travel however many hours to the next destination, it's like, is the Dutch oven in the car? And you could just like hear it rattling in the back seat. It's like, yep, it's there.
Good. I love that. So that's when you were traveling with a car, when you were going like to Europe, or you said you went to Brazil, which Brazil is on my list. Brazil is very, very high on my list. And you were traveling off of vibes. How did you know how to pack if you didn't know exactly where you were going? How did you go about that?
Yeah, we did know generally where we were going.
Okay.
Like we weren't just hopping from country to country. It's like we would spend 3 to 6 months out of the US, come back, and we
Okay.
had we had planned, what would come after that. So we would return to San Francisco to go to our storage unit, swap out clothes, eventually clothes, ended up at my parents' house on the East Coast, Jack's parents' house on outside of Seattle. So kind of wherever we traveled, we were able to like swap out clothes, but that was part of it when we were planning places. It's like, okay, we went to South America in like the winter here, so it was summer down there. So we knew it was like, just summer clothes. So could be pretty minimal, but it was hard. And like packing for winter climates is tough. We ultimately traveled with, I guess, just one checked bag, one carry-on bag to
Impressive.
for the two of us. Yeah.
For both of you guys.
Hmm.
Wait, Courtney, back up. So you and your now husband traveled with one carry on and one like together, like one. So
Yeah,
there
yeah.
was
I
only
had the
two.
checked bag. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, y'all are so brave. Okay, I love
It's
that.
hard. I mean, everybody's all about the carry-on stuff, and I'm like, I need a check bag. We ultimately, throughout our journey, at one point, the airlines lost our bag, and it was a huge pain in the ass. But besides that, like, it's always been okay. I mean, knock on wood, wherever I can find not fake wood in this house.
I'll knock on
But,
wood. I have.
but
There we go.
thank you,
Yes.
thank you. But yeah, like, winter is like you gotta have sweaters. You have to have like big
Yeah.
jackets. It's like you can't just pack two things, especially in Europe is so tough to live in the winter with minimal clothes because they don't really have dryers there, and so like everything hangs to dry. So it's like you have a bulky sweater and this thing's going to dry in like 3 days, and
Yeah.
so you need definitely more clothes than probably what people would think.
Okay, this is helpful. So I love that I learned so much. You would travel for a couple of months, then kind of come back to a home base and then go back out again and with all the things that you needed. And then you're ready for your next adventure. You're not just out there for however many, it was 3 years that you did, right? three
Yeah, yeah.
years just completely away from your home base. You were coming back, touching grass, I will say, and then going back out.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's still for a short period of time, but yeah, it definitely helps like essentially have a place to hold your stuff to swap it out.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Where was your favorite place that you went?
Ooh, I have a couple.
Okay.
One is Norway, which I mentioned before. I feel like we ended up going back to both Stockholm and then Copenhagen too, and just kind of getting more of a Scandinavia vibe. But all of that really spoke to us. I think Norway was incredible because the people there just spend so much time outdoors. I feel like everything made sense to us. I think now we're trying to buy a house in Seattle, and it is so challenging to find a well-designed house, which here reads as like a newer home that's not 4,000 square feet. I mean, the homes in Norway were just all beautifully designed, super functional, and went for quality over quantity. So it's like you walk in and there's heated floors, but it's, a very appropriately sized house. There weren't any McMansions there. And it just all fit into the landscape so beautifully. And so everything there was just really, really relaxing. So I think that was a good one for kind of like what a home life could be. And then the Dolomites were in the top five for sure. So those are the Italian Alps in Italy and the north of Italy, which have become super popular since we have been there. But that area used to be a part of Austria, and so a lot of those locals consider themselves Austrians, not Italians. But kind of same thing. It's like one really good food. I think Italy was the place that really encouraged me to like keep up with cooking and cooking in the way that I now do, where it's the slow food approach, where it's like you're not just like trying to cook the fastest meal possible and eat. It's like it's all part of the process, and you can enjoy the cooking piece, and it can be very meditative and ultimately, create something really beautiful. But yeah, it's not just to like eat things as quick as possible and not care about the food as much. So that was great, and also similar vibes, just being outdoors all of the time.
And working there, because you were remotely working through all of this. At one point, though, didn't you start your own like business?
I did, yeah. So that was a mix of probably a couple different cultures, maybe a lot of Europe and then also South America. I think when we were in South America, it's like the siesta is a real thing. I'm like, this is beautiful.
How is the okay? Listen, I really believe in my whole heart I need to live somewhere that has a siesta. That's truly what I think I'm missing. So tell me, keep going, keep going.
Yes, I mean, I feel like I've always been a big napper. Like, I'm just tired in the afternoon. I feel like, I mean, I used to have like terribly low B12, so I think that was part of it where I like literally couldn't stay awake.
That's fair.
But like a 2 p.m. nap is just wonderful. And anyway, between that and just the general culture in South America is like people are just so relaxed and friendly, and they're not so focused on work. And I think we see this kind of everywhere we travel outside of the US, at least the places that we have been to, where you meet someone new and they're not like, what do you do?
Yeah.
And I think it's really hard to overcome. Even the other day I met someone and the first thing they asked me was, what do you do? And I was like, it's like hard for me to explain to, and it just caught me so off guard, I think, after being away for so long. But yeah, the lack of focus on work started to just seed in my mind, where I was like, I am very work focused, and I had a great job, but the 40-hour week is a grind. And a lot of those times, I mean, the work that I do for product design and product strategy is deep thinking. And so even a normal 40-hour work week, I was just so exhausted. And I think other things were starting to weigh on me, where I was like, it seems weird that I'm stressed out about like having a doctor's appointment, right? It's like now I have to like move my meetings and like tell somebody that I can't come because I have a doctor's appointment. And this built up enough over time where I was like, do I want this like normal 9 to 5 job? And basically, ever since I graduated college, I had been doing freelance design work. And yeah, during the time when we were away, I had reconnected with some old colleagues who had started their own kind of, I'll call it an agency, where they just gather, really great experts in tech, so like engineers, product design, product strategists, content strategists, and do really cool projects for really cool companies, but it's kind of all on our own time. We all act as consultants, so there's, no one managing our schedules. And I feel lucky to have been able to make that move. I mean, it took years to get that experience that made me feel confident that I could do that. But yeah, at some point, I just kind of pulled the trigger and said, like, I feel good making this jump. And I think it is a risk worth taking to see if it works out and see if I feel healthier. I mean, I just feel like the number of gray hairs I've gotten over the year and just like the general body fatigue, it's just something didn't feel right in my kind of wellness journey. Yeah, it honestly had the past kind of year and a half now being with Pineworks, the agency, I've felt the healthiest I think I've ever been.
Amazing. You're an inspiration, Courtney. So you ended up, well, right now you are still with Pineworks, right? You're still a partner with Pineworks. Mental health, thriving. It's giving, freedom from the 9 to 5, which is amazing. You can do your own siesta if you want to now.
Exactly.
Yes. What would you say, now looking back on your entire journey, was one misconception that you had about digital nomading while you were digital nomading or before you started digital nomading?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think there's a mix of things. One is I felt like the digital nomad life was such a glamorous one. Like you look at it from the outside, and it's like, oh my God, you like get to travel to all these places. And it totally was, right? Like I felt amazing during all of that. I think it is an experience that, I wouldn't give anything up for. It was an amazing 3 years. But I also learned it's not for everyone, right? It's like not everyone wants to travel. I don't think travel is necessary for you to have an expanded scope on the world. I think it helps with that, but I don't think you need to do that sort of travel to have that. And so that's one piece of it. And then somewhat related is that it seems like you should be out doing something every single day or every hour of the day. I think social media has kind of ruined that for us, where we think that we need to be living our best lives possible at any
Yes.
second, or like if you're not happy something is wrong. And like there were certainly periods where like I wasn't happy, my husband wasn't happy, like we were having normal relationship issues, there were work issues, like things come up still, and that's okay, right? Like it's okay to not feel like you're having the best time. It's okay to not like a place that you're in. I think there are definitely areas where it's like we don't feel great here, but it felt wonderful to know like there is, a next place coming and we'll get out of the situation. But yeah, it doesn't have to be glamorous at all times to feel like you can grow from it.
So did you experience like burnout while you were digital nomading? And not, I think this is a two-part question. Burnout from being a digital nomad and then being burnout from just like working.
Yes to both. I think everyone's gonna hit burnout at some point. Uh, with work, I think I would have hit that even if I was just living somewhere normal. The job that I had before was just really intense for a period of time. It was like, 50 to 60-hour weeks and a lot of talking to people, so sorts of market research and user interviews. And so the days were just really tiring. Um, but yeah, I think that would have happened anywhere. And then, yes, to the travel burnout. And I think the biggest thing was honestly the planning of it. Like, it takes a lot of brain power to be like, okay, we are going to go to this place, but in order to go to this place, let's say we're going to South America, it's like, well, it takes 2 days of a flight to get to South America. So, like, what day do you need to book this? And then if you're booking across time zones and trying to pick up car rentals, it's just so much to plan. So when you think about a 1 or 2 week trip for 3 years nonstop, I mean, that is a lot of trips to plan. And so some of the most relaxing periods were honestly when we just came back to the States and like we were trying to figure out where we had wanted to settle down. So we lived in California for a bit of time and, some of the other places on the West Coast, and just being able to like hang out for a couple of weeks at a time. And then once we started staying like a month or longer, it honestly felt a lot better to not worry so much about the planning and kind of what comes next.
Okay. I'm taking notes. I'm taking like mental notes here. So for me to avoid burnout, to me it sounds like staying in a place longer will just really settle me down. I kind of knew that for myself just because I don't like moving around too much anyway. So staying in a place longer periods of time will really help reduce that decision fatigue of having to figure out where I'm traveling to. Okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Any other advice that you think I should know for this one?
Yeah, I would say like anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months is probably a good one. Like I think giving yourself a reasonable amount of time there if you don't like it is helpful, right? So it's like, what's your certainty level that you will like this place? And if your certainty level is kind of low, it's like maybe, bank on the lower side. But yeah, I think the other thing that was difficult too was just knowing when to book. It's like you don't want to plan out 3 years starting from day one. It's you go in chunks. But in some places of the world, especially in Europe, during the summer or any high season, you have to book pretty far in advance to get the spots. And so that was some of the stress too, where it's like, okay, yesterday I looked and there was like twice the number of properties available, and now there's, half. So let's kind of book on that sooner. So I think if you're a procrastinator, maybe work on that a little bit.
Okay, I'm like a middle person. Like
Yeah, yeah,
I'll be fine. It'll be fine. It'll be fine.
yeah, yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Courtney. Okay. Final question before we wrap things up. If you had to put your entire nomadic journey into one lesson for others seeking me, this path, what would it be?
Yeah, I would say that a little bit of discomfort is goes a long way in the sense that you should always try to make yourself be at least a little bit uncomfortable. And I think that's, really how you grow. I think about when I go to the gym or do a workout. And it's like, if you're not really feeling anything, it's like, is your body really growing? Or, are you getting stronger? And I think similarly for me, nomading did that for me, right? It was like always a little bit uncomfortable, but not too uncomfortable that I was unhappy. But I feel like I grew so much during that time. I learned so much about cultures, and I think that is the remarkable thing about humans, where we can grow and adapt and evolve so much with just that little bit of discomfort over time. And yeah, honestly, if you're thinking about nomading, I would just say try it. It's like give yourself a couple of months, see if you like it, and keep going if you do. And if you don't, that's okay too.
And thank you so much, Courtney. I appreciate your profound knowledge. I'm so grateful that we had this conversation. So, before we wrap things up, is there anywhere that people can see your journey or anything like that? Any platforms that people can follow you on?
No, we had started documenting some of it. We started an Instagram account, but it felt like so much of a burden, and like we weren't really doing it for us at that point. We were doing it for other people. So we have a lot of photos. They may be coming sometime soon, but we'll keep you posted on that.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Courtney, for sharing your story. It was amazing to hear. I learned so much. With that being said, I hope that you have a good day or a good night, and I hope that you all are well. Bye.